What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about, Willis?
Position on every question is always the same. They would like less work, no accountability, and much more pay. At least one chapter of the American Federation of Teachers is planning to go on strike if they have to work this fall. So many administrators and school districts have no choice but to obey their demands. In Miami-Dade County in Florida, that's one of the country's biggest school systems, the superintendent has warned that his schools may have to stay closed in the fall.
I will not reopen our school system August 24th if the conditions are what they are today. Our reopening plan contemplates a phase 2 reality. We are still in phase 1, a phase 1 that has degraded since over the past few weeks.
Many schools that do plan to reopen will do so under a series of restrictions that have no basis of any kind in science. It's a kind of bizarre health theater. Students will be kept 6 feet apart, everyone will have to wear a mask, class size will be limited, in some schools there will be scheduled bathroom breaks, etc., etc., no sports. In Washington State, education officials are considering letting students go back to school on the basis of their race. Non-white kids would get to go back first, while white students would be ordered to stay home until the virus subsides. Now, you may have thought that plans like that were eliminated with the Brown versus Board of Education decision 65 years ago. But no, it's all coming back.
Once I first heard this, I thought he was pulling my goddamn chain. I'm like, I don't trust the media. This is a bunch of bullshit. Because there's no official article on this shit. But you know your boy, I'm going to research. And I researched it, and I seen it in a reopening of Washington Schools 2020 District Planning Guide. That's the only place you can find it. It's on page 31 and 32. And we're going to read that shit here today, baby. It's not about segregation. It's about extermination. Now let's read this slick shit. Phase in opening with distant learning by geographic region or by grade level. The reopening Washington schools work group determined will best meet the needs of Washington schools is to have a phase-in school opening with distant learning, with the phase occurring by geographic region or by grade level. With this scheduling concept, OSPI and the work group expects that district will prioritize face-to-face instructions provided planning time for educators for both remote and face-to-face learning, and provide time for professional learning for educators within the workday. Key characteristics. Some school faculties open for some groups of students, while others remain closed until a later date or certain community characteristics are met. Students who are not attending face-to-face are participating in continuous remote learning. Oh, this is just the beginning, people. It's finna get deep. Now let's read this slick shit. Serve all elementary students first. Serve students furthest from educational justice first. Schools should examine which student engaged the least during the spring of 2020, consider how to meaningfully close those gaps. When school reopen in the fall, schools may choose to prioritize students who have the least engagement in the spring or who had the most challenging time learning remotely. Using their data on the Washington School Improvement Framework, schools may identify which student groups face the largest opportunity gaps and consider bringing some students back first as a way to prevent those gaps from widening. This could include students with disabilities, English learning, students experiencing homelessness, students experiencing poverty, students of color, and other students facing opportunity gaps identified in the district data. Now let's talk about these so-called opportunity gaps. People, in the history of the United States education system, when have they ever gave a fuck about the education of the children in these so-called geographic locations? Never. We have a 60-year gap. You understand what I'm saying? And they are complaining about 4 months. No, we're not buying it. And I'm going to explain to you what's really going on. The children that fits the criteria are the minority communities. Those are the geographic areas they are focusing on to go back first. And you say, well, what is wrong with that? There's a lot of things wrong with that. Number one, these children were already having problems before the pandemic ever started. Due to the school system, these schools rank in the bottom of the list. They were F and D schools to begin with. No funding, out of date books, the teachers are underpaid. And if you don't care about your teachers, how could you care about the students? So why pick these babies to go first? It ain't like you care about their education because you didn't care about it for 60 years. All of a sudden, you care about them now. What is the real end game? Well, the real end game is when we was on a lock and key, they was installing 5G in these so-called geographic regions, area codes, where majority of the lower class lives. They want you, the parents, to agree to bring your babies back so they can fry their little brains. They don't care about your children. There's always been a gap amongst the geographic. So when have they started to consider thinking about these babies? They're not thinking about these babies. It is not what you think it is. It is not segregation. It is extermination. This is not about color. It's about class of people, the lower class and the higher class. The ones that can afford to stay home are the middle class and the rich. The poor, bring your babies back. Now let's run down the list. During the pandemic, if your child was receiving free lunches from the school, he or she fits the criteria. If your child needed assistance of getting any computers, he or she fits the criteria. If your child had more virtual absence than he did when he was attending a physical school, your child fits the criteria. If your child suffers from disability, which is special ed, your child fits the criteria. If your child suffers from poverty, your child fits the criteria. And any child of color, according to them, they claim that the cases are going back up. So why would you want these babies to go back to school when the cases are going back up? Doesn't make any sense. Here's my take on it. I don't trust it. If you're not going to open up the entire school system at the same time in a state, I'm not sending my baby back. I don't trust y'all like that. Y'all have lied to us so much. I'm not risking my baby's health. I would not send my baby back. I would try to find any means I can to set my child up to do virtual classrooms. But we're not going back to that school. You know what I'm saying? When you just doing it geographically. No, we don't play like that.
I am Morpheus.